Greetings and welcome to the Developing Dad podcast. I'm your host, Michael J. Griffin Jr., and today I have a special treat for you all. But before we get started, I need you to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this out to all of your friends and enemies and your frenemies, whoever. Share it out to everybody. And without further ado, let's get started. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, I'm actually not going to talk. Well, not me sitting in this seat. We're going to discuss the art of Christian thought, a short primer that I gave at our church a few months ago. I believe it was in August. Yes, it was in August. I'm going to play that recording. I've modified it some to show these slides throughout, but I'm going to play that here and allow you to partake in what the church partook in. But I have an announcement before we get to that. I have an announcement, all right? From now on, all of my notes, everything that I do, will be here on my new Gumroad site for sale. Now, for those of you that are members, either on Locals or YouTube members, you will get a discount code where you can come here and get this for free because you're already supporting the work that I'm doing. But for those of you that would want the notes for this specific talk, it's the Art of Christian Thought here, and it's $5. It's an eight-page PDF, 7 pages with 7 pages of content. There's an extra page, but anyway. And then the 5 things that fathers must do, I put that up there, and I'm going to be building this out as I do new classes. I'm going to put the new information there, and then I'm going to do some of the retro classes that I've given. I'm going to format those notes and put them up here as well, so that you can begin to partake in those notes, even if you're not a member. You can purchase the notes if you find this helpful. All right, but without further ado, let's get straight to the teaching.
Amen.
Testing. All right. I'm starting my timer because I do not want to go late or go long. All right, so we bring that first slide up. Ryan, thank you for the introduction. I'm excited to teach you all. Yes, so we're going to be going over logical fallacies, just a short primer. For our venture tonight, or our journey tonight, I drew something for you all. So I want that. I want y'all to, Mary, that next slide? I want y'all to see something. I drew something for y'all. Now y'all looking at that. Can anybody tell me what that is? It looks like what? Wait, say that.
Painting A Starry Night.
The famous painting A Starry Night. Now she was able to figure that out. Why? Barely. Because of the little circles, the little squares, right? I want you to keep this picture in mind. I'm going to bring it back in a little bit. But go to the next slide. Now this is actually what the Starry Night looks like. Beautiful, right? Very clear, artistic expression. A lot of different colors. It makes you feel something. You are a part of that Starry Night. You understand what Van Gogh was trying to get across, right? My picture, on the other hand, not as clear. Wasn't as clear, right? Okay. So we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to explain to you why that's important as we go through our lesson. Let's go to the next slide. So the next question is very simple. What is logic? Anybody have... And you all cannot answer. My children want to answer it. And Jelani, you can't answer it either. All right? What is logic? Anybody, any thoughts about what that is? What is logic? My opinion. All right, we got my opinion. All right? That might not get a good grade in my class, but yes. Rational objective truth. Was that, or that's a really good answer. Now I'll let one of my students answer, whoever raises their hand first. All right, okay, Michael wants to answer. What is logic? So he says logic is the art and science of reasoning or thinking well. You can move to the next slide. So yeah, he had my students, they heard this all last year. They were probably, even the mom of one of the students, she was like, yeah, I heard it too. So logic is the science and art of thinking well. So I brought the definition back a little bit. It's not as long as Michael's definition, my son's definition, but logic is the science and art of thinking well. okay? And it comes from the Greek word logos, which means word, statement, or thought. So keep those three words in mind: word, statement, and thought. Now, what do I mean by science and art? So the word science comes from the Latin scientia, which just means knowledge, right? By science, I mean the body of knowledge surrounding a subject. Every subject has a science, right? There's a subject of the science of theology, the science of timepieces, the science of acoustics, right? There's a body of knowledge surrounding that discipline. And this is what we mean with logic. And we're going to go a little bit into that in the logical fallacies primer. And the other term I use is art, which comes from the Latin ars or artis, which means skill, method, or technique. Now, this is where my picture and Van Gogh's picture, right? You see the difference in skill and technique, right? So the pictures are supposed to give you a visual representation of what it's like to be very bad at logic, which was my Van Gogh, right? Van No is what we should call it, or Van Get Out of Here instead of Go, or someone who's really good at logic, like Van Gogh. Van Gogh's really good at the art of painting, and you can see his artistic expression inside of his paintings. So when you're good at logic, you're more like Van Gogh, right? You can be skilled in the art of thinking well, and that's what we want to begin with tonight. So the next question is, should Christians be logical? What do you think? Yes or no? Most people are going to say yes, right? Do you know why we should be logical? We should be able to understand why we believe what we believe. That's very good. What was that? Balance. Okay, we can have balance. Any other? We stay with the truth. All right, these are some very good answers. I'm loving this. Have valid arguments. All right. Now somebody here has taken a logic class before. He's like, valid arguments, right? That's a part of that science of logic. All right, should Christians be logical? Everybody, yes. Someone else? Oh, come on now. Well, I'm going to let you say that one. I'm going to bring the mic over here to you so you can say that.
We should be able to think like God.
Come on. Ryan, she's getting ahead of us, but you know, like she must be in our notes. All right. Should Christians be logical? Next slide, please. Yes. So why should Christians be logical? This is why I believe that we should be, and this is the argument that I make. We already saw earlier the word logos, right? Logic. It means word. Jesus is the word. Let's go to that next slide. John 1:1 says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Well, in the Greek, that's enarchein hologos, that word logos, ke hologos in proston theon, ke theos en hologos. So you see logos is in there 3 times, and just like logic, right? So Jesus is the Word. Let's go to the next slide. Someone mentioned that we should know the truth. Well, who is the truth? Come on. John 14:6, what does it say? Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. When we talk about the truth, we're talking about a person. We have a personal relationship with the truth. The truth is not something that's abstract and out there, just something for us to grab at and figure, oh, this is my truth and this is your truth. Oh, no, there's one truth. There's the truth, the way, the truth, the life. Jesus is the truth. All right, so we got people saying that he's the truth. So this is why I say some of y'all look like y'all were in my notes, but that's all right. But here's the next one. Jesus Christ, who is the truth, is the image of God. Let's go to Genesis 1:27. So we're made in his image. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. Next slide. And it says here in Colossians 1:15, who, this is talking about Christ, is the image of the invisible God. Right? We were made in his image, but Jesus Christ is the perfect representation of God. And those of us who are in Christ, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, I'm going to stop myself right there. Let's go to the next slide. I get excited about this, though. 2 Corinthians 4:4 says, in whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine on us. So we're made in God's image. Christ is the image of God. He is the truth. Next slide. So we should have, come on, That's why I said you were in my notes. We should have the mind of Christ. And Paul says we have it in 1 Corinthians 2:16. So should Christians be logical? Absolutely, because we're made in the image of God. Christ is the image of God. We have the mind of Christ. For who hath known the mind of the Lord that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. We have the mind of the Word. We have the mind of the truth. Because we've been transformed. And I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself there too, but it's coming. All right, so, and we've been called to love God with our minds. Next slide, Mark 12:30. And it says, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. We've been called to love God with our minds. And what do we do with our minds? We think. We think. And we're supposed to think our thoughts like Christ because we have his mind. Now, here's where it gets fun. We're not to be conformed to this world. Romans 12:1-2. It says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your what? Your mind. That you may prove what is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. We're not to be conformed to this world. Now, when we do conform ourselves to this world, that next slide is what we're going to see, right? Let's see what that next slide looks like. Oh, man, I forgot to put that one back. Oh, no, it's the slide after that one. So let's talk about logical fallacies. All right, but when we commit logical fallacies, this is what our next slide, this is what our thinking looks like. All right, this next slide. That's what my picture, right? When we don't think like Jesus, that's our version of the Starry Night, and that might actually be too good, right? Because you can tell what that is, kind of like she was able to say, well, that's Starry Night, because you knew what Starry Night looked like, but you probably couldn't tell where this was taken or who actually did the drawing, and none of that, unless I told you. Unless you must have some really good eyes if you can figure out, well, that looks like the sun, I guess, and I tried to draw that steeple, but it's really messed up. My thinking is messed up, and the art of my thinking is messed up when I commit logical fallacies. So what is a logical fallacy? Next slide. A logical fallacy, simply put, is an error in thinking. That's all it is. It's an error in your thinking, right? What do you mean? What can I follow your reasoning from start to finish and to be consistent? Or do you have an error in there somewhere? And there are three main ways in which we err: in our words, in our statements, and fully in our thoughts, right? And we'll talk about, I break down the fallacies that we're going to cover into those three categories. And I'm going to give you three simple questions that you can ask when trying to discover whether or not someone's committing a logical fallacy. Even you can ask yourself these three questions. So our words, our statements, and our thoughts, just like the logos, right? Next slide. All right, so here's some examples of fallacies using words, all right? Now, one is called the equivocation on terms. This is what most jokes, really good jokes, are made of, right? If you're familiar with it, like most dad jokes. So if I were to say something like, my wife asked me for an Apple Watch, so I took her to an orchard and we stared at trees for about an hour, right? Now, that would put me in the doghouse. Now, please, wife, tell them that I actually bought you an Apple Watch, and that's not really the type of man that I am. She has an Apple Watch. She got what she wanted, okay? Right. I may look crazy, but I'm not that crazy, okay? So one way we can err is if our terms are not clear, if in the middle of an argument we switch terms, right? And I'll give you the question that you can ask when you're trying to figure this out. But think about this. Whenever we're in a culture right now, some of the words that are being bandied about, let's say that, and redefined, right? Man, woman, the very bare essence of who we are is being redefined. Well, men can get pregnant. What? No, no. You're redefining man, right? That we got to talk about what it is. biologically, human male cannot get pregnant, right? But we equivocate on a lot of terms, okay? So we have a lot like justice, equality, equity. We're redefining terms at like, this is actually what the enemy tries to do. If he can confuse us and make us have us confused about the terms that we're using, then the argument is already won. He who defines wins. I forget exactly who said. I think it may have been R.C. Sproul. But he who defines wins. If we allow the culture to define terms, we lose. So we have to be able to spot when words are being equivocated upon or defined poorly. There are three ways in which words can be misused, but mainly it's equivocation. So you want to make sure that you ask the question, and I will get to the question, but the question is, what do you mean by that? You'll see those on the slide, but what do you mean by that? Ask for clarification. What do you mean? What is it that you're saying exactly? How do you define woman? If a woman is a biological human female that has the potential to bear children, how is a transgender woman a woman? You've redefined the terms. Now we don't know what a woman is anymore, right? So we have to be able to ask these questions. And we're not doing an aggressive push. We're just asking questions because the onus is upon them. They've redefined the term. We know what the word means. We have the truth. Remember, whose mind do we have? Right. And Genesis 1:27 said, male and female created he them. We have to get our words from where? The word, right? So that's one example with the words. I'll talk about I'll use accent really quickly. This is one that children use a lot, right? Well, I didn't push my sibling. Accent is when you change the definition by putting accent on it. Well, they didn't push them. They just extended their arm and right. I didn't really push him. I just bumped into him. It's like, yeah, you pushed him. I do that with my children often, right? I say, okay, well, you're putting the accent on the wrong syllable here, on the wrong word. What exactly did you do? Oh, that's pushing. You pushed your sibling, right? You extended your arm, right? Okay. So, but logical fallacies work even when you're disciplining your children. So that's free. That's a free one there. Next slide. So examples in statements. So we have the amphiboly or exigency. Now, I'll tell you what these are, right? The amphiboly is the one that I mentioned earlier about me taking my wife to an orchard to, Apple Watch. Okay, that's the amphiboly. But the exigency is actually something that we see all the time in advertisement. It's actually called the advertiser's fallacy. Buy now, limited time offer, right? You should buy this product because there won't be any more very soon. Well, that doesn't mean I need the product, right? You're trying to confuse me now. You're using statements that make me think, wait a minute, I'm going to lose out on this great opportunity to get this product that I don't need, right? But we have to be able to say, okay, that statement is designed to confuse me. I'm not going to be confused. But there are other places in that this is used, right? Climate change, right? You have to do this for the environment, or we're going to lose everything, right? You have to make this legislation happen, or we're going to lose the rainforest. Or, okay, well, wait, let's pull this back a little bit and figure out. So God created all of this for the world for us to use and to actually be good stewards over. So let's talk about our stewardship of these things, but I'm not going to be confused by your desire for me to do this without thinking and do it quickly, right? That's the exigency fallacy, okay? Next slide. So here's some examples of thought. Now, these are the ones that are most common. I did a couple of them, and there are a lot, right? So this is when you are trying to avoid. I'm checking my time to make sure I'm still good. All right, I got 6 minutes. All right, we're going to make this quick. Okay, so ad hominem, you'll see this often. Right? Ad hominem is when you attack the man instead of attacking the argument, right? You get to the point where it's name calling. If someone calls you names, instead of dealing with your actual arguments, oh, you Christians are the worst, I can't believe that you just X, Y, Z, whatever names they call us, we're bigots, we're homophobes, once they get you, and this is something that we really have to pay attention to, they use those devices in order to confuse you and to play on your emotions. And they shut down your logical centers. They shut down your ability to think. because there are three, and this is a free one, it's not on the slides, but there are three main ways in which we are persuaded. One is through logic, the logos. One is through ethics, or the ethical character of the speaker. And the other one is through pathos, or our emotions. And a lot of what you see happening in our culture is based on emotions. If they can get you emotionally invested, or fear, they play on all of these emotions. Fear, connection to someone. That's why you'll see that third one, ad misericordiam, that's misery or pity. They appeal to your pity, right? This is something that you hear as a teacher a lot. Well, you know, Mr. Griffin, I didn't do my homework because my dog ate it, right? Who's had that? Some of y'all might have done that back in the day, right? My dog ate my homework, you know, I woke up late and I didn't get a chance. Well, we went here, we did that. Have pity on me, right? And then there's the ad populum, which is, you'll hear this a lot. Well, you don't want to be on the wrong side of history, right? Everybody's agreeing with this, so you should come right along, right? 51% of people agree, so that means it's right. No. We stand on the truth, right? Jesus Christ is an audience of one. If God is right, let God be true, so every man be what? Come on. That's Romans, right? So we're not about ad populum. We're not about appealing to the number of people that agree with something. If Jesus agrees, then it's right, all right? Jesus said it, it's true, all right? And I'm not going to go through all of these, but you see that there's a lot, right? Because I want to give you the questions. But, you know, we got that next slide. Another one is the examples of thought that try to obscure things or assume things. So one of the things that you'll see, and we talk about, Pastor Ryan talks about this often, is the Hebrew Israelite doctrine that black people are Israelites. That and that Jesus was black. And I just had a run-in with them at my parents' church a couple of weeks ago. I'm just reading the Bible. No, you're actually selective arrangement. You're cherry-picking certain things from the Bible in order to make your point, while the actual what's the word I'm looking for? The actual contradiction to your point is 2 verses down, right? Right? It's 2 verses down. You just keep reading. No, I'm just reading the Bible, though. I'm just reading the Bible. Okay. Keep reading then. Please, just keep reading, right? Or well, why y'all here on Sunday? Why are you reading from Revelation where it says, I was in the Spirit on what day? Right? Are you reading, I'm John, and Jesus has the brass feet. Okay, well, just keep reading, and you'll get to the point where it says, we worship on the Lord's day. It's not that hard, but I'm just reading the Bible, right? But that's selective arrangement, okay? And once we know this, we can start to say, well, you know, until you, and I ask him, I say, well, you know what the fallacy of selective arrangement is? No, I don't know what that is. Okay, well, you should probably figure that out, because you're not just reading the Bible. You're filling the Bible with lots of meaning. You've assumed what you've yet to prove, right? Okay, so let's keep going. I'm almost done. So I got to get to the questions. I want y'all to get to these questions. Let me go to that next slide. So obscuring and assuming. There's so much good stuff in here. I put more in here than I needed to make sure I had enough time. But then there's begging the question. There's post hoc. Either or fallacy is one that you'll hear a lot of as well. Where's that one? You'll hear that a lot as well. So the bifurcation is you either believe evolution or you're an idiot. There's only two. No, there's actually more options than that. I could be a thoughtful Christian who understands creation and understands my Bible and knows what I'm talking about. That could also be a possibility, right? It could be, right? But you artificially limit choices, right? Or the naturalistic fallacy, right? The is-ought fallacy. Well, in the 1800s, slavery ought to continue in the South because we couldn't exist as an economy without it. That's not a reason why you should continue to subjugate a group of people because you've been doing it, just because we want to keep doing it. It's pleasant for us. Okay, we can't exist well, you'll learn. You'll learn how to exist without it, right? And then the fallacy of compromise. That's the last one I want to look at. You can listen to me. I'm the safe middle ground between conservatives and liberals. And generally, they're either a liberal or conservative, but they're trying to hide it. But the middle, it's a fallacy of compromise to say that basically what you're saying is that Jesus is in the middle ground between liberals and conservatives. No, he's not. He's King of Kings. And all the nations need to bow to him. So that's not That's a fallacy of compromise. Don't be confused by that. Oh, I'm the safe middle ground. Nope, that's not it. All right? So let me go to these last few slides. I want to give you these questions. All right? So questions to ask, and you can write these 3 down. But the top one is the first question. All right? When you're talking about words, what do the words mean? Or what do you mean by that? You have to make sure that you understand the terms that people are using. In the video that we watched a couple of weeks ago, when they were talking about inspiration, I immediately recognized that the 2 people who were discussing inspiration had 2 different definitions of what inspiration was. One was, I'm inspired like a muse. I believe the Bible inspires me because it makes me want to be a better person. But the other man, the more conservative gentleman, was talking about verbal plenary inspiration, meaning that God spoke through these men and caused them to write exactly what he wanted to write using their personalities. 2 very different definitions. They were never going to meet because nobody took the time to ask the question, what do you mean by that? Can you clarify your definition of inspiration? It's important that we peel the layers back and be able to ask these questions, because you can get down a rabbit hole of asking, of having a fight with someone, and y'all are talking about 2 completely different things. But you're using the same term. Just like Jehovah's Witnesses use the term Jesus. What do they mean by that? Right? Pastor Ron will tell you, they don't mean the same thing we mean. The Mormons don't mean the same thing we mean by Jesus. Right? But you have to be able to figure that out by asking, what do you mean by that? Right? The next slide, second question to ask, all right, is what you're saying true? A lot of people say some very false things. Right? Jesus was black. No, actually, he was a Middle Eastern Jewish person who would probably have been, the same olive skin colored, but black like me black? I mean, okay, if you believe that, but is what you're saying true? What's your evidence? Where are you getting that information? Can I see your source for that? Ask the question. Be willing to ask that. Is what they're saying true? True premises. You need to be able, because if a statement in your argument is true and it's a linchpin to your argument is false. Your argument isn't valid if you have false premises, okay? So, and that's another good question that we should ask. Specifically, in our church context, you always should be asking the question, well, where does the Bible in context teach that? Right? Where does it teach that in context? Where does it teach that I can make my words make reality in context? Right? Is that true? Is that a true statement? The last one, let's go to the last one really quickly, all right? And does it follow? Does it make sense? If I were to take the premises that you're stating and actually use them consistently, would it make sense in every case? Right? That's what we call reduction to absurdity. If your logic is good, then there's going to be some absurd things that come from that. Right? If it's okay for me to murder a baby in the womb, why is it not for me to murder a baby 2 months out of the womb? What's the difference? They still depend on their mother for everything. They can't live on their own. If those are your premises, let's reduce it to absurdity. Let's see if that really makes sense. Does it follow logically? So we should be able to ask that question. Does it follow? Does it make sense? If I were to change the terms, does this argument still make sense? So I had a memory verse for you all, but I'm not going to put that in there. Normally I do that. So let me summarize. I think it's 2 slides away, and then we'll be done. Okay, so summarizing. There you go. One more. That's the memory verse. 2 Corinthians 10, 3-6. We recite this every day before our logic class. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against what? The knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ, and having in a readiness to revenge all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled. It's all about obedience, obeying the commands of God, obeying what Christ has said, and that way we have the mind of Christ. And let me go to this last point, summarize, and let me get out of here, right? So the summary is Jesus, the image of God, is the word and the truth. Christians, those in Christ, God's exact representation, Hebrews 1:3 tells us that, should be like him or have his mind, right? And then all errors in thinking fall into categories of either words, statements, or thoughts. So you should be asking these 3 simple questions. What do you mean? Is that true? And does it make sense? Does it follow or does it make sense? All right, that's my time, and I'm going to, yeah. Here you go. All right, so I hope that blessed you all. And until next time, be on alert, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. All right. Bye.